A fresh cup of coffee. There's nothing quite like it, especially when it comes to coffee in New Orleans.
This has been a city where people take coffee breaks before anywhere else in the United States.
Early in our country's history, New Orleans became the cradle for coffee in America.
We were getting it in here in the 1720s.
And over the decades, the best coffee across the globe has reached our port.
There's so much coffee in the world, and there's so many ways to get it, so many origins, so many different flavors that you can try.
Those beans evolve into roasts that define the unique flavor known here in the Crescent City.
We are a coffee city for a lot of reasons. Our history of coffee and chicory that is so deep-rooted in our culture.
A culture that birthed a generation of coffee lovers, searching for something special and finding depth in their cups.
Coffee is more complex than red wine. Has more phenols or flavor and aroma compounds than red wine.
A brew that seems so familiar, but with a robust story to reveal right here in New Orleans, where coffee is locally roasted.
The pursuit of the perfect cup of coffee. There's something that almost seems unattainable about that perfect blend of bite and sweet, maybe nutty, or the right roast, light and blonde or dark, almost burnt, you know the stuff. For some, it's just a cup of caffeine, a daily routine, habit. But right here in New Orleans, the perfect cup of coffee has been around for centuries. And here, in the bend of the Mississippi, coffee in America really found its roots.
The love affair goes way back to the beginning.
The history of coffee in New Orleans is so rich, it runs in the veins of the city.
If you're not socializing around a spirit, you're likely socializing around coffee.
Just ask Suzanne Stone.
If you can see the cup, it's not roasted enough.
She wrote the book on it.
Coffee runs through the history of New Orleans, just like the river runs through it.
An account of coffee in the Crescent City, Stone's book details how the bean started in the Caribbean and made its way up the Mississippi.
We were getting coffee from Saint-Domingue, the French colony that became Haiti.
But it was under Spanish rule in the late 1700s that the coffee we know today first found its footing under the careful pour of a legendary woman.
And many people know her as Rose Nicode, a woman enslaved who bought her freedom during the Spanish years by selling coffee.
According to Stone, Rose, whose last name was likely not Nicode, first started selling coffee after church in front of the cathedral, a brew so sinfully divine, Stone's book notes after her death, Rose's customers would wander listlessly with a pining in the bosom that could not be satisfied.
It's recorded that her coffee was like the benediction after a prayer. She made enough money to buy her freedom, continued vending, and then had enough money to open the first coffee stall here in the French market and possibly in the American South.
Likely the first, certainly not the last. Over the next 2 centuries, New Orleans would create a capital of coffee, fueling the country with their morning cup.
We are the second largest coffee port in the world. Only Brussels is larger. And as we became and grew as a port, other things grew here. Coffee roasting. Folgers moved their plant from San Francisco here. That's the largest roaster in the country. Dupuis is the largest coffee storage in the country. We also have the largest silo storage in the country.
But right outside the port is where the coffee of New Orleans really found its form in the city's decisively French flavor.
The Café au Lait stays, I think, as part of our French culture.
The Café du Monde was established in 1862. It's been run by the Fernandez family since 1942.
The storied Café du Monde in the French Quarter makes coffee one way.
But the coffee's always been brewed this way. It's a blend of coffee and chicory. The little golden flakes is the chicory in there, and it really has a nice smell. Oh yeah.
A mixture of coffee, some chicory, that's a French import, and of course, milk.
Once you start drinking coffee and chicory, you don't want to drink anything else.
That New Orleans blend with a little chicory has helped cultivate an industry and fueled tradition. Tradition that's made New Orleans a crossroad for caffeine, renowned for its roast. But in a town so deeply rooted in tradition, coffee is a ritual brewed to be broken. When it comes to getting coffee into your cup, let alone your pantry, there's a supply chain that stretches deep into Central and South America and well across the globe. Most of those beans imported right here into New Orleans, and no one's done it longer than Westphalt Brothers, still based out of this same building where they planted roots in 1851. They say they're the country's oldest continuous running green coffee importer.
Millions of pounds of unroasted green coffee.
Everett Brown is a coffee trader.
And it really started with that caffeine boost.
A boost many Americans couldn't get without the Crescent City.
There was 25 billion cups of coffee per year are being imported into the port.
That's a lot of caffeine.
There is the coffee belt, as they call it in the world, which is in between the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer. And that's where coffee is mainly grown. So Central America, South America, parts of Africa, and Southeast Asia are the producing parts of the world.
Brown's job is to get that coffee to roasters across the country.
If a roaster comes to me and says, hey, I want X quality coffee from Y country at Z price, we sort of take that and run with it.
This wall of numbers, just a handful of the coffees Brown can run with. Beans from different farms, different countries, years, even altitudes.
Above sea level is what they describe as high-grown coffee.
With all these variations, you can bet there's a lot of taste testing.
We call it cupping. It's our quality control method of making sure that we're getting the best coffee or exactly what we're trying to purchase. I am putting the water on, so that'll take a few minutes. This one is a Brazilian. These two are Honduran coffees. This is a naturally processed coffee from Uganda. We're gonna go upstairs, roast these coffees, bring them back down, grind them, and then cup. It's probably gonna take between 5 and 8 minutes. We're gonna hear the coffee crack. This is called a dryer. That's really nice coffee. Toss it in, let it grind up. Exfoliating steam if you ever need a facial.
Right from the top.
Get it, all the way down to the bottom. Really gonna get in, get your nose close to the water. So this is the fun part. Get your spoon in. We cup a ton of different coffee, so we spit it out.
I just drank it.
Just keep it. When we actually cup, we're either, approving or rejecting the arrival, making sure that matches up with whatever was sent to us prior to the shipment.
Usually there's no right or wrong. When it comes to cupping, just a lot of slurping and spitting. With the spin of a table, each series of cups reveals a new flavor profile, a character of coffee with varieties so vast, you'll likely never have the same sip.
There's so much coffee in the world, and there's so many ways to get it, so many origins, so many different flavors that you can try. And because it is a product that changes from year to year, you're really getting something different in every cup that you drink.
Up next on Locally Roasted.
We sell our coffee to numerous coffee shops in the French Quarter, Cafe Envie, Cafe Beignet, Cafe Fleur de Lis, Steel Perkin.
Walk around your neighborhood, maybe just a few blocks, and you'll likely find a coffee shop. A quick, convenient stop for your morning cup. They're typically stocked up with specialty espresso blends or single origin grinds. There's really no wrong answer here. These independent coffee houses are solid standbys with familiar baristas, sometimes homemade bites, and almost always a pretty decent cup of joe. But if you're drinking coffee from a place like this in the New Orleans area, there's a pretty good chance that brew was roasted all in one place.
For decades, people have been drinking Orleans coffee every day, whether they knew it or not.
Started in 1985, Orleans coffee owner Bob Arsenault has been locally roasted for years.
We were the first independent coffee roaster in New Orleans whose objective was to sell to the independent coffee houses throughout the city.
And since the 80s, those coffee houses have kept these roasters hot.
We sell our coffee to numerous coffee shops in the French Quarter, Cafe Envie, Cafe Beignet, Cafe Fleur de Lis. Steele Perkins buys our coffee, Avenue Cafe on St. Charles Avenue, Bean Gallery on Carrollton, Monkey on Carrollton, and coffees all throughout Jefferson Parish. Cafe, Pacino's, French Press.
In fact, Orleans Coffee even packs and labels carefully curated blends for brands across the region from a myriad of options.
We have a great variety of coffees from all around the world, Central and South America, Indonesia, East Africa. We have medium roast, dark roast. We sell more espresso than anything else, so we have a lot of espresso blends.
Arsenault knows his art is in the roast, but he can't do it without a quality bean, sometimes sourcing it through importers like Westfelt Brothers.
Someone like Bob, who's more focused on the roasting side, to come and buy. It's almost like a grocery store.
But sometimes Arsenault goes right to the source.
We buy coffee from a little town in Colombia called Monserrate, and there's one particular farmer, Norinella Pujimwe, and we buy her coffee. I'm drinking it at home right now, and this year's competition, she won the competition out of 40 other growers.
It's a relationship that makes the origin of these beans so much more tangible. The taste of farm to cup.
It's very noticeable once you taste her coffee. It's so good. So we're very proud that that's one of the micro lots that we have in our portfolio. And we get to share that with the world.
Thousands of pounds of coffee just like that pour through these roasters every week. Toasted up, spun, cooled, then packed and labeled, a rotation of roasts that can please any palate in a town cultivated on coffee.
It is just deeply rooted in our culture for drinking great cup of coffee every day, whether it's a premium specialty coffee, your pumpkin spice latte, your cappuccino, or your coffee and chicory cafe au lait.
Arsenault just hopes as he churns out coffee for the Crescent City, the next wave of roasters will keep coffee lovers craving something special.
Beyond coffee and chicory, becoming known as not only a city for deep coffee culture and for importing coffee, but for the great coffees that we're roasting and that the other specialty coffee roasters in town, we're trying to bring people in New Orleans into understanding there's so much better coffee out there.
Coming up on Locally Roasted.
Because of that relationship, then when he does have a really great year, we're right there and we get first dibs on it.
There's nothing wrong with the coffee you make at home or that cup you buy at the gas station on your way to work. Quick, convenient, that jolt of caffeine you need in the morning. But try a cup from a specialty coffee shop and you'll really taste the difference. Brews with extensive flavor profiles, wider than a list of wines, roasts that coax characteristics of coffee you may have never known. A focus on the coffee cherry, that's where the bean comes from and where it's grown. You can find that here in New Orleans at a handful of places, bringing coffee to the next level, whether it's with an exclamatory shout or a yellow truck.
Purchased a little 10-pound roaster. I put it in my laundry room.
In 2012, Jeffrey Meeker had a dream to roast that was boiling over.
I was roasting enough coffee that I had enough green coffee in my house that it started to twist the floorboards. And so my wife kicked me out.
So he set out to take his coffee biz on the road, buying some wheels.
That face is pretty iconic. The face of the truck, that is, not mine. And French Truck became the name.
7 years later, with 8 shops, including cafes in Baton Rouge and Memphis, French Truck doesn't cut corners, steering coffee lovers down new avenues en route to a high-quality cup.
We're just the very last step. And just like in a great restaurant, you can't make an amazing dish with cut-rate ingredients. You can't make a great cup of coffee with something cheap.
Great coffee starts with great beans, and that starts with solid relationships across the globe, building confidence in farmers who in turn can be confident in making more investments in their farms.
Whether it be to his processing methods, his tractor, his pruning equipment, fertilizer, whatever he's doing to improve the farm. And because of that relationship, then when he does have a really great year, we're right there and we get first dibs on it.
I think it's vital to the specialty coffee industry and to what we do is to having a relationship not just with the coffee but with the people that produce it, with the importers that bring it in, or directly with the families or farms that grow the coffee, and that they know that we're supporting them and vice versa.
Over at Hay Coffee Company, co-owner Greg Rodrigue is part of the third wave of coffee. Specialty coffee connoisseurs sourcing direct to give their customers more than just their morning latte.
Every good cup of coffee has a story, and part of our job is to help tell that story.
Like many third wave shops, Hay roasts in-house, stamping out fresh blends, crafting coffee that is true to its roots.
It's almost like pulling off a magic trick that we're trying perpetually to get better at, is take a coffee and be like, how do we roast this to bring forth as much of the inherent character of that coffee cherry as we can.
That's something Meeker hopes drinkers discover in every batch they bag. Down the line, finding familiarity in quality coffee.
Getting to the point where our customer base treats coffee the way they might treat wine, or they might learn about hops and beer, or the origins of the fruit that they've got on their table.
At French Truck's Gerttown roasting facility, each color-coded bag of beans comes sealed and packed with its own complex identity.
You'll see tasting notes like lemon curd, or chocolate, or raspberries, blueberry muffin. That all sounds crazy to somebody who is buying a coffee who is used to maybe not as high a level coffee.
To be a resource for that within the city and to be part of the fabric of specialty coffee within the city of New Orleans. And to me, it's all about that joy of sharing something that's really incredible from start to finish.
It's a passion echoed at French Truck, where Meeker hopes that love for his art has a home in the Crescent City for years to come.
Our goal is that this Heart of New Orleans warehouse will be where we grow the company for the next decade at least.
Still planting their own roots, Rodrigue knows Hay Coffee Company is just a brushstroke on the city's canvas of coffee, their medium in the cup.
It's an art form, it's a craft, and we just love it. We enjoy it.
Still ahead.
And you can do stacks, which you can do instead of just like 2, you have like 7 sometimes, or there's rosettas, which are a little more complicated.
Turn that to the left.
It was my very first time ever doing anything like that, because I'm not a barista in any way.
The community of coffee is vast. There's the coffee lovers like me, the coffee importers who bring that bean up the river, the coffee roasters who turn that bean into something special, and then there are the baristas. Thank you, Kelsey. The keepers of the coffee, up early every morning to get that grind going, but they're so much more than just someone who's making coffee behind the counter. It takes time, practice, and a little patience to perfect the skill, the art of the pour. They're much better.
Some people definitely are in for just a cup. They want to get in, get out, get their fix for the day. But the majority of people are looking for something a little bit more special, a little bit more than they get at home.
If you ask Kelsey Horowitz, a barista at French Truck Coffee, it's not hard to understand why so many people crave coffee.
I mean, the caffeine helps. But it is a flavor experience. It's a ritual. It's part of people's day. It's something they can look forward to and rely on every single day.
It's why she's committed to curating an experience that gives customers a full picture of what's in their cup.
So we can tell you what farm your coffee came from, who grew it, what altitude if you really want to know, a little bit more background on the people behind the coffee.
But the difference a barista makes doesn't stop there. Balancing brews from different devices and drinks drawn with various ingredients, their craft so much more than a simple pour.
Like any physical skill, it does take a lot of practice. Baristas with more experience, you can tell from their milk and their latte art and all of that business.
But sometimes the pour isn't all business.
Welcome to this throwdown at Hay Coffee.
The Barista Throwdown, a battle royale of roasts.
So this one's definitely really silky and nice and pretty shiny and glossy.
About once a month, baristas from across the region crowd a cafe to show off their stuff.
You take your milk and you take your espresso and you start pouring in. The cream will separate in a specific way. So when you're pouring it in, the foam on top will pattern out.
Coco Guillo organized the event where you'll see dozens of different foamy formations.
You can do a simple heart and pull through. You can do a tulip, which is going to be like 2 hearts, like a heart on top top of a heart, and it looks like a tulip. And then you can do stacks, which you can do instead of just like 2, you have like 7 sometimes, or there's rosettas, which are a little more complicated.
Turn that to the left. It was my very first time ever doing anything like that, because I'm not a barista in any way.
Brandon Cohen, a newly minted amateur latte artist, would prefer to stick to just drinking this stuff. But after trying his hand at a picturesque pour, he's happy to leave the espresso expressions to the pros.
I think it's also a chance for people to express themselves, because it is an art. You know, I learned that today. It's not as easy as it looks. It takes real skill to do what they do every single day. Most people probably don't appreciate them, but I sure do now.
It's all about growing the community together. The throwdowns are great because we really truly can come all together.
These events are where they learn from each other and hone their craft. More than a doodle, baristas hope the final touch before the coffee hits your lips can elevate the beverage beyond its humble roots of a locally roasted ritual.
It's not just a cup of coffee, it's something more. It's more of like a human connection in which we don't get from a lot of things in life, a lot of transaction when it comes to food and beverages, but it's like with lattes, just having that little heart or like something on your latte that's visually to you, it just makes you feel good.
The perfect sip, whether it's packed with chicory, a relic of coffee from centuries ago, still relevant in contemporary cups and still traveling the same routes that helped establish the roots of coffee here in America. Or maybe it's a cup that's embellished with art, a flower, a heart, that visual cue that lets you know this cup is just for you. Or maybe something roasted fresh, sourced from the finest farms, beans imported from thousands of miles away, meant specifically for the flames of New Orleans. That perfect sip is really what you make of it. It's what you like. No matter the blend, the cup, the pour, the brew, if it's locally roasted, that perfect cup of coffee, well, it's not hard to find.